Good evening, one. Good evening, all. Good evening, one and all. So, since the inattentive ADHD adulthood problems video was pretty popular, I thought I'd go ahead and make a second one. I've been researching quite a bit of material in terms of what other problems there are to deal with, and there are tons. And when you really sit down and think about it, and also when you read up on more neurochemistry and psychology, it just kind of gives you a bunch of new ideas and new things to kind of talk about and see. So, here we go again. Here's a part two. And before we jump into the action, I wanted to talk about a book I published. Um, I published this book back in August, and it's basically a semi biographical and a helpful advice type of book. Sort of like a self-help book, self-help book for people who have inattentive ADHD and ADHD in general as well. I'm not going to disregard that. I talk about my different stages in my lifespan from elementary school, middle school, high school, college, and then I also talk about all the difficulties that are faced during those stages, all the difficulties we go through because of the handicaps that we have, issues that stem from having very low specific neurotransmitters. Having low neurotransmitters, specifically the ones like dopamine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, serotonin, GABA, just to name a few. There's a multitude of problems that come with having low levels of those neurotransmitters. And these are issues that can really, really cause some havoc, insanity, sadness, madness, just disorder and chaos in every sense of the word, in every detail of life. And these issues manifest themselves in all sorts of different ways through different stages. Just think of the climactic problems and catastrophes that can happen at different age groups. Think of those movie moments that you see where things just go really wrong for a character. Well, with inattensive ADHD and ADHD in general, a lot of us live moments like that. Not every once in a while, but frequently. And it sucks. And thankfully, there's a way to get yourself help. If you have not sought out and tried or had the concept of maybe going and getting yourself diagnosed, I'd highly recommend it. Get yourself diagnosed, and there are multiple stimulant medication options, and there are options for other forms of medication as well. There's multiple non-stimulant medications out there, and there are plenty of other videos on YouTube that are gonna give you a good amount of information on. There's far better ones than I'm ever gonna make. So do yourself a favor and just go watch somebody else's. Cause yeah, mine ain't gonna be as snazzy as some of the ones that are out there. You know, with their little animations and all the hickox and hoo ha's and yeah, people are good at that stuff. You know, you have to buy some pretty expensive programming sometimes in order to design all that stuff. And it's just not in my budget. Sorry, I'd rather buy music gear, but what are you gonna do? So anyway, with that being said, there's many problems like I was saying with the lack of neurotransmitters that can occur with ADHD, and my book discusses those things through events that happen in my life. I'll talk about many of the major events that happened in my life that have to do with inattentive ADHD, and at the end of every chapter, I do a little recap section where I talk about why those things happen to me and why those things are common things that happen to people with ADHD. In my case, especially inattentive ADHD. And I have a section where I talk about, okay, We have all these issues that I went through, issues that can happen, and a lot of times people ask, okay, well, what can I do about it? In every chapter, I give supplemental advice in this recap section. I give supplemental advice, and I also give advice on behaviors to adapt and what to do in certain instances. There's a lot of uncertainty sometimes with some parents, especially parents who are new to the ADHD community, parents who have kids who just recently got diagnosed and they might not know how to cope or how to handle certain things. And there's certainly a fair share of good material out there for it. But if you want to check out my book as well, if you feel your son or daughter has inattentive ADHD, yeah, I would recommend my book. I'm obviously biased. I wrote the damn thing, but I'm trying to help you out here. I've tried to look for other inattentive ADHD books, and there's very few out there. Inattentive ADHD is like that, excuse the phrase, that ugly stepchild that no one's really paying attention to. And it's a harder condition to diagnose. Our traits are not as physical or as obvious as the combined type and hyperactive type comrades that we have. Inattentive types are much more sedentary and really introspective. All the action, all the fireworks, boys and girls, are going on in our minds, not in our bodies. While hyperactive types and some combined types can go out there in the world with a ball of energy and just go, do a million things. I do that in my mind every day. But anyway, though, let's delve into it now. Inattentive ADHD. Problems in Adulthood. Part 2. Number 1. Very little tolerance for people or situations that annoy or upset you to high levels. You'll never do it again. Or you'll never see that person again. Let's elaborate here. For us inattentive types, going places and being around people can be a really uncomfortable, annoying, whatever other negative adjective you want to place in there. For us inattentive types, being in certain scenarios or amongst certain people can really make us feel bad. Whether it be because we don't want to be there in the first place, because we don't feel like we're going to vibe with the people. We might feel like someone, disrespected us, or just no connection. We might also not like the place, the area for some reason, or just some constraints. And I know it sounds like I'm nitpicking here, but it makes a big deal. I've been to many places where I just feel like, man, I'm just not feeling it here. Seems majority of people in this area, this location, this place, everyone's connecting. I just can't. It's not because I'm shy. I've tried talking to a couple of people, but I just don't feel right. And a lot of the time, our social friends, significant others, what have you, they want us to go to these places and these events, not sometimes, but sometimes frequently. And that can be quite upsetting. Because sometimes we have to do a lot of effort. We have to place in a lot of effort and motivation, which we lack, to get up and go to these things. Long distance driving for someone who has inattentive ADHD is very hard. It's very draining. So, you as a person with inattentive ADHD might tell yourself, just like I do, I tell myself that, why would I put so much effort and so much time into going to a location or a place or event that I really don't want to go to in the first place? And this can be very upsetting to a friend or a significant other who really, really wants you to go with them to this event. But what people need to understand is that For someone who's inattentive ADHD, it's a life of being underwhelmed for the most part. This isn't everybody. I know I'm probably gonna get someone thinking or telling me, hey, you know what? I know an inattentive type and they're not like, yeah, I know, okay? I know. Believe me, I know we're all different. The different personality types amongst, the different inattentive types is a unique thing too, not to put us all under an umbrella term, so to speak. So, I understand that. But anyway, going to these places, especially after a long week at work, because most of the time these big events happen when? During the weekend. The weekend, the event's going on, big shindig, and everyone's been hyping over it. You look at your phone, you look at your text, whatever the hell, and people are like, okay, dude, it's coming, we got to do this, it's coming, the big event. And then you've just been at work all week surrounded by a bunch of people you more than likely don't like. What happens? You want to come home, you want to work on your main interest, or you just want to relax and just be like, okay, I'm finally home, I don't have to plan anything, I don't want to think about time, I don't want to think about anything, I just want to be me and just relax. And then guess what? You're gonna have your significant other, your close friend, or whoever it may be, nagging you to go to the event. Because they're not being bad people by wanting you to go or making you go. I mean, it's just that they can't comprehend how different you are as a person because of the condition that you have. So, to avoid issues with this, I recommend that you inattentive types tell your friends, tell your relatives, or whoever it may be that you're close to that, wants to constantly invite you to these things, especially if it's your significant other. Because it can get very troublesome from both parties, not just from the person with the condition, the person without. But mention to them that it's a little straining, it's a little draining, and compromise. That the biggest solution can be compromising sometimes. Trying to understand the other person's perspective and knowing that just as much enjoyment that you get as an inattentive type from staying home after being out and about and just kind of relaxing and doing your thing as an introvert, because more than likely you are one, understand that hyperactive and combined types, for the most part, are pretty extroverted people, and they get their so-called batteries recharged from being around a lot of people. I certainly as hell don't. Telling you right now, but just as hard as I find it to believe that people, get their batteries recharged by being around other people who are energetic and just lively. Yeah, there's probably other people who think like, man, that guy must be quite the dull, boring individual. At the end of the day, it's just your opinion, man. Quote the dude. Nevermore. It's all subjectivity. That's what it is. Number 2, low sex drive and low libido. I guarantee quite a bit of people don't know that having inattentive ADHD brings itself with a potential of having a low sex drive and low libido. Why is that? Well, if we look at serotonin, the reward system in general, those neurotransmitters are low. Our dopamine is low. Our serotonin is low. It's quite difficult to get allured, so to speak, if your serotonin levels are low. I'll speak for myself. Growing up, my libido is very low. I recall being around guys who were savages. Good Lord Almighty. The things they would say about females and what they would do to them. Just guys being guys. I remember thinking to myself, well, you know what? I don't feel like that. I mean, I'd like to. I remember thinking to myself, with the relationships that I had with females when I was a teenager. I'm quite a bit of problems in that regard. If you want to find out, just read my book. I talk about how my inattentive ADHD brought along quite a bit of issues with the people I was seeing, and how, ironically enough, some of the girls that I was seeing were combined and hyperactive types, which really did not help. Anyway, though, so I remember thinking to myself, you know what, I have, just I felt I had an average, urge towards, towards females, but I recall my friends and most guys I knew were not like that. They were completely different. These guys, that's all they thought about was females and whatnot. So as I got older, I remember feeling very different, just because I remember the urge and the desire was not as high. And then as I got older, I read about this and found out that, hey, with a lot of people who have intensive ADHD, having a low libido is not uncommon. So the problem comes when you're in a relationship with somebody and the other person might have what's considered an average libido level, and you, as an inattentive type of whichever gender, have a low libido. So what happens with that? Well, there's going to be times where your partner wants to do the old hanky panky, and you are just not going to be in the mood. And this is going to happen often. This can lead to so many problems. It can lead to resentment. It can lead to grudges. It can lead to one partner, thinking that they did something wrong. And unfortunately, this can lead to affairs and a whole mess of other problems as well. Because the person with inattentive ADHD is not doing this on purpose. They're not doing it to upset their partner. And they're not doing it out of spite. They're just not in the mood for it because of low serotonin. And when the action does occur, there's a sense of being really uncomfortable during the experience. Some people report having the sweat and moistness just bother them, that they can smell it and it just nauseates them. Every position that they're in, their joints hurt, their ligaments hurt, just all sorts of uncomfortable feeling. Itchiness, and some people even report in articles that I've read that they can't wait for the experience to be over. That might sound insane to some people. To a lot of people. Most of these people would be people with higher levels of serotonin, because that makes a huge difference. So they're not going to be able to relate, just like we're not going to be able to relate to them. Now, this is not all inattentive types, okay? This is, I believe, a good amount of them from what I've researched. Okay? It's just a theory here. So this can cause a lot of anger and a lot of problems. What's the best solution to help out with something like this? Talk to your partner. Be honest with them. And let them know what's going on. Let them know how you feel during the process. And another major important point is that after the experience is over, since inattentive types have low serotonin and low dopamine levels, once the highest point of arousal, so to speak, is reached, well, then you just used up a majority or a good amount of your reward system. What do you think happens next? Boom, it just goes back down. Your reward system, like that towel metaphor that I used before. Just imagine a towel that you just dip into the sink and you twist it so the water can come out. After multiple twistings, there's not going to be any water left. That's what happens to your reward system. And it's been reported by a lot of people that you feel kind of down. You feel sad. You might just feel really apathetic afterwards, and it's not a good feeling. And a lot of people with inattentive ADHD, man or female, they report feeling bad afterwards. And they tell themselves, is it really worth it to go through that experience where I'm going to feel uncomfortable in the beginning, something I don't want to do in the first place, for me to only feel bad afterwards? That's tough. Best thing to do is talk to your partner. And supplements for sure are really going to help you out in that regard. Ideally, the supplement L-tryptophan is a great helper for the neurotransmitter serotonin. It's a great supplement due to the fact that L-tryptophan is a precursor to serotonin. It's a direct precursor to serotonin, I believe. In the chain of serotonin, serotonin is a neurotransmitter. And neurotransmitters have precursors in the chain link that eventually become that neurotransmitter. So other common supplements for serotonin are 5-HTP, which from articles I've read dictate that it's earlier in the serotonin chain, and after moving along in the chain and through different means of transportation, it sort of drifts away. The full effects are not reached by the carrier once they get to the later stage of the chain link. So the effects are not as strong. And I've also read a couple of other negative things, but I'm not here to talk about that mainly. I might be for another video. But L-tryptophan would definitely help out with that. Also, vitamin B12. There's an issue with gene mutation with vitamin B12 when it comes to people with ADHD. And B12 has a lot to do, more than people would know, about your libido levels. I started taking B12, I believe, a year and a half ago, and it really made a difference. I take B12 methylcobalamin form. The methyl form of B12 is the most bioactive. Majority of vitamins and multivitamins that you see that are B12, they're from a different form of B12, which is less bioactive. This is just the general cobalamin form. I urge you to seek out different, just for curiosity's sake. Next time you see, a B12 vitamin bottle, look in the back and see what type it is. Majority of them are going to be cobalamin. What you want to look for is methylcobalamin form. Number 3, correlating to number 2, very easily turned off. This yet again has to do with the implications of having low levels of serotonin. I recall growing up, and not too many things turned me on. Not because I'm some posh twat or something like that, but it just felt that things that would turn other guys on, that females would do, didn't turn me on as much. When I started taking B12 and tryptophan, I was like, holy crap. Okay, now I understand why. And it just all made sense. But I just want to say, because there could be a lot of couples out there that can probably wonder, why do certain things about my significant other turn me off so heavily that I might not want to do certain things? Well, it has to do with low levels of certain neurotransmitters. In this case, I think serotonin plays a very prominent role. So it's not the fault of either party in this regard. It's just, yet again, another issue of low levels of neurotransmitters. And you're going to notice that's going to be quite the theme in this video. Neurotransmitters have so much to do with how we think, how we act, and how we view life. And you're probably going to be like, oh, isn't that nature and nurture? Well, yeah, of course, but nature and nurture also have a lot to do with neurochemistry. Our neurochemistry is extremely important. It all correlates and relates to itself in a multitude of different ways that essentially become life, the life that you know. Number 4, another common occurrence I've seen is leaving lids and cans opened after using them, not putting things away once you buy them, and forgetting something you started. My family members all have different forms of ADHD, and yes, good God Almighty, leaving lids and cans open is almost like a family tradition here in my household. Growing up, I would see stuff left open, stuff that really should not have been left open. I would just see it open, and I would, since I would go to sleep late, which is common if ADHD going to sleep late, as I'm sure you night owls watching right now know what I'm talking about. Right. So anyway, yes, leaving the lids open and not putting things away. I have been to households of people with ADHD where their groceries are still in the car, and it was like from 2 days ago. And it's not only the canned stuff or the stuff that's okay to leave in the car. I'm talking produce, like cabbage and broccoli and other stuff that would have caused the car to reek unless you take it out. So unfortunately, it's not until the car reeks or it's some sort of necessity that we have to put it away that a lot of people with the condition go and put it away. And they put it away at that point because it's stimulating. It's kind of like, okay, I have to do it now. I have no choice. It's unfortunate that it takes that much, but that's what happens. And also, once you buy something, you kind of don't have the motivation to fix it, to open it, to install it and go through the process. It was just exciting maybe to buy it. You're motivated one night, and then you bought the thing. It's been 3 months, and the box hasn't been opened. But why does that happen? Well, that happens because we have low norepinephrine and low dopamine. So our motivation levels are at the floor. They're floored, so to speak. So what helps out with that? N-acetyltyrosine. Tyrosine's great. It's so helpful. It's basically like what I would call the little brother of stimulant medication. It gives you just a little push that's good enough to get you through perhaps a work shift or class. Sometimes when I can't take my medication when I'm in one of my grad school university classes, tyrosine really helps out. My mind does not wander as much, maybe 80% of the time, especially if the subject matter is boring. But otherwise, I can pay attention pretty good. Tyrosine is really helpful. I have a link in the description below where I talk about all the different supplements that I take, what they do, how they help people with ADHD, and where I buy them. Usually Amazon. Amazon has really cheap, so I recommend you do the same. And also the brand that I get. I recommend organic supplements. If you're going to be taking supplements, don't take that cheap crap. Take stuff that's going to do you good. It's your body, it's your brain. You want to help yourself out. You don't want to give yourself garbage. As my government instructor would say, garbage. That's what your work is, students, garbage. So anyways, yeah, don't take garbage. Take the good stuff. One of my favorite companies is Gero Formulas. Gero Formulas is a great company. Majority of my supplements are from them. I'm not affiliated with Gero Formulas. I've never spoken to them. I would someday in the future, maybe, just because they're an amazing company. They have so many good supplements with grade A ingredients, organic stuff. So to recap, yes, taking tyrosine and of course taking a group of supplements from your nootropic stack that you're going to be taking, which I highly recommend if you haven't. And I'll be doing a video on different nootropics that one can do. Or let me reiterate that. I'm going to be making a video where I show you how to make a game plan. Or better yet, I show you how I made my game plan in order to help out my ADHD, my inattentive ADHD, in order to combat the symptoms to the best of my ability to be the best me I can be. Because you as well can be the best you can be as well. Why not? So, I'll be talking about that a little later. Next. 5. Cleaning does not happen often. And when it does, you become Mr. Clean and go all out and clean everything. Clean everything known to mankind in your house. Okay, why does this happen? So, let's say your house, you haven't cleaned it, let's say what, a month. So you basically have been looking at the same open bottle of something, or open can, old pizza box, whatever it is. It's been there for months. It's almost become part of the family. For all you know, it's going to become a family heirloom of some sort. So, why is it that you only get motivated to clean on very rare occasions? And on those very rare occasions that you do feel like cleaning, you go crazy status. Yeah, you go full-blown shave your head, white shirt, white pants, and you turn into Mr. Clean. And if you were to have long hair and not shave your head and still have the white shirt and white pants, well, then you would be Andrew WK. And you would probably be partying at your house. But most of us don't really have the long hair for guys. I did. I was into metal and punk growing up, so my hair was up to my well, it wasn't that long actually. It was kind of just the middle of my torso. I remember once it passed the nipple eye. It was quite the accomplishment. But anyways, I digress. The reason why cleaning only happens once a month is because you don't have the motivation to clean. You don't have the motivation to clean because you have low dopamine, low norepinephrine. So if you have low that, I feel like Jason Alexander talking like that. But yes, if you have low levels of norepinephrine and dopamine, motivation is going to be a really big problem. And guess what? You're going to feel uncomfortable cleaning because you're going to have to bend your body sometimes to get to nooks and crannies and really uncomfortable positions that your ligaments are going to hurt. Your body's going to feel uncomfortable because you have low levels of GABA, low levels of acetylcholine, which deal with muscle contraction. And you're not going to be in a good mood because serotonin is low. So you're only going to be cleaning when you feel absolutely amazing. I'm talking 8-9 hours of sleep. You ate really good. You just found out that the in-laws are not going to be coming over for 5 years. That type of good. So, that's when you clean. Usually. And what helps out that regard? What helps that out? I would recommend Tyrosine in that regard. And I would recommend R-alpha lipoic acid. They're both supplements. Okay, folks? And R-alpha lipoic acid helps out with acetylcholine. It greatly helps out with that. So it helps the body feel smoother, your muscle contraction feels nicer, and you'll have the motivation from tyrosine. You have the motivation and concentration as well from tyrosine to be able to do all that. And you can go knock out and turn up that Andrew WK party music and clean at the same time. What a concept, right? Okay. Number 6, catching up on sleep. I talked about this in the elementary school years. Guess what, folks? The party continues. If you have little sleep, if you have less than 7 hours of sleep usually, or for some, just even less than 8, yeah, you're going to be in a bad mood all day. You're going to be in a bad mood because your body's not going to feel good. You're not going to feel good. Your mood's not going to be good. And a lot of the time, you can take out that aggression on people that don't deserve it, So, it sucks. Because then you're perceived as a douche. And, unfortunately, not really your fault, but the fault of... Well, I can get really philosophical there. But I'm not. Anyway, that's just the fault of those low neurotransmitters. So, if you get too little sleep, Studies have demonstrated that we need to reach the deepest stage of sleep. So, for those of you who are familiar with the stages of sleep and the types of waves the brain makes, alpha waves, beta waves, and the different stages of sleep, the reason why sleeping is so important is because we as human beings, we need to reach the deepest stage of sleep, deep sleep. We need to reach that a couple of times throughout the night. And if we don't do that, if we don't reach that deep stage of sleep, then the synthesis of neurotransmitters, particularly the ones we lack in this example, are going to be low the next day. And this is going to leave you worse than you usually are when you get a good night's sleep. Because we have low neurotransmitters of this regard to begin with, and then when you have even less of that, oh man, a bunch of problems can come. And then your whole day is going to feel crummy. It's going to feel like crap. And you're going to be like, yikes, man, what am I going to do? Stress, problems, chaos. So, I have a sleep app, and I recommend you guys get one too. There's multiple sleep apps, out there that you can use to track your quality of sleep. How does it work? Well, your phone's got a microphone. So basically, some apps, they record your sleeping patterns throughout the night, just through you breathing, snoring, whatever it is. And the next day, you can see your levels of sleep throughout the night, your peaks and valleys, so to speak. Or preferably what should be peaks and valleys sometimes. And I've noticed that on days that I don't feel as good, it's because I haven't reached deep sleep as much or ever, unfortunately. And this has to do with the fact that we have issues with slow onset sleep. This has to do with serotonin and its correlation to melatonin. So sometimes it takes us 2 hours, 20 minutes, 4 hours, 6 hours, 30 minutes, whatever it is. It just takes us a long time to go to sleep. Just because our serotonin converting itself with melatonin is flawed because we have very little serotonin to begin with. And then our acetylcholine levels are also low, which makes our muscles and our movements very uncomfortable. So it's really hard for us to find our sweet spot. So it's just like the song says, we're just tossing and turning all night. And then when we do finally get to sleep, our body might just wake us up because we're really uncomfortable for whatever reason, or because it's too cold or it's too hot, too stuffy, whatever. And then we're not going to reach that deep stage of sleep, either ever or as much. And the next day, we're going to feel like crap. I've had instances where I've slept for 8 or 9 hours, but the quality of sleep wasn't good. I didn't reach deep sleep as much, and I felt like crap the next day. On the contrary, I've had nights where I've slept 6 hours and I had a lot of deep sleep, and I felt great. So that demonstrates to me the level of importance from deep sleep. So what helps out with this? I take melatonin, and a specific type of melatonin. I take melatonin, a 6-hour timed release, 300 micrograms. That's important. 300 micrograms, not milligrams. When melatonin was synthesized towards the mid-earlier portion of the last century, it was synthesized with 300 micrograms, not milligrams. Micrograms are smaller. And from my own testing, I've noticed, just like research has shown, that lower levels of melatonin in the microgram form are optimal. They're really helpful. Because I've taken melatonin levels that are on higher dosages, the common ones that are in supermarkets and whatnot. This is back in the day, towards maybe the time I was around 22 or 21. And they helped, but just not as much. Now that I'm taking melatonin 300 micrograms, and specifically a 6-hour timed released version of it, yeah, my sleep is a whole lot better. And I take tryptophan as well before I go to sleep. And Tyrosine. I take those three supplements within 10 to 15 minutes of each other, usually within a half an hour span, and then I'll go to sleep. And then I notice that when I go to sleep, it's usually when the tryptophan fully kicks in, which usually takes maybe around 15 minutes to sometimes 25 or half an hour, depending. And once my body just feels comfortable and I feel the tryptophan fully kick in, then I can finally knock out. And that really helps secure the fact that I'm going to be able to fall asleep. So if you have trouble with sleep, I would recommend that. And another thing to note before I end this point is that let's say you've gotten 6 hours of sleep, or 6, 5, or 4, whatever little quality, a little amount of sleep for consecutive days. So let's say that at maybe 3 out of the 7 days of the week you haven't slept too good, and those other 4 days you've only slept a decent amount. What your body's going to want you to do, and what's really helpful from the studies and articles I've read, is for you to sleep a good maybe 9 or 10 hours one day, just to recap and catch up with the hours of sleep that you missed. I've only seen articles of this with children on the website ncbi.com that specifically talk about this and did all sorts of testing and stuff, but I honestly agree that this continues on into adulthood as well, because this is what happens to me. If I have crap sleep for like 3 days, I'm gonna need to hibernate like a freaking grizzly bear on the fourth or third day in order to feel good again. Otherwise, I'm gonna be miserable. So give yourself a day to catch up on your sleep, okay? Because otherwise, you're not gonna feel too good. So just a bit of advice. So to recap, have a day to recharge your hours of sleep so you can hibernate. Get your melatonin, get your tryptophan, get your butt to bed. Next point. Number 7. This one was mentioned from the childhood issue years, but it applies in adulthood as well. Uncomfortable undergarments or clothes equals extremely uncomfortable and irritated you. And the dreaded belt issue with the pants. So, dig it. Since we have low levels of GABA as well, which deals with a lot of dermatological issues and perceptions and afferent neurons. Yeah, basically in layman's terms, if we wear clothing with uncomfortable fabric, yeah, we're gonna feel uncomfortable. That stuff is gonna be itching up a storm on our body. It's gonna feel as if ants are crawling up your arms sometimes, or as if there's a daddy Longlegs just crawling up your back. It's gonna be bothersome all day. So do yourself a favor. Get clothing that is of a material that does not irritate your body. I prefer cotton, cashmere, stuff of that nature. If you want to go all out and get silk boxers, by all means, gentlemen, do the do. Ladies, do the dandy do, as my friend would say. But what I'm trying to get at here is wear clothing that lets your body and skin breathe. You don't want to wear clothing that's too tight that just constricts your body. I mean, you're going to be out in this all day, I would imagine, at work especially. Wear stuff that's comfortable. Do your body a favor, especially inattentive types, because I know the issue. I've sometimes have dreaded picking an outfit for a certain event and I have to be there for hours upon hours, and I'm like, why did I wear this? I feel like crap. My evening is ruined now. And then with the belt, oh, that dreaded belt, the the placement of the belt hole where the loop goes, that's really important. If it's too tight, if it's just slightly too tight, it can get some people with inattentive ADHD nauseous. People with the condition can get nauseous if the belt is too tight. If the pants are too tight, there's something about that area. And this isn't something I've ever seen studied, but this is just my assumption because this is something I suffered a lot from when I was younger. So I've had to make holes in my belt for the belt buckle so many times over the years just because the ones that are on the belt, the placement where they're at is too little to the left or too little to the right, and my stomach and body really feels when it's too much. So it's very specific. So if you're one of those people that loses and gains weight often, this can be a problem. But the biggest solution you can do for that is have a belt that suits your waist. And if your body size or waist size changes, just make another hole. But that's a really big deal. Like I've never heard anybody else talk about this and all of the ADHD information I've studied. But it's a thing. The belt. Don't forget it. The clothing is more of a common thing, the infamous label. For example, in my family, having a label on the back of your shirt is a myth. It's an urban legend around here because it's like none of my shirts, none of my family members' shirts over the years had labels because it bothered us. So I'm sure you guys have gotten rid of labels as well on your shirts and garments and all this and that. But thankfully now a lot of companies are being cooler and they're printing their label on the actual T-shirt. So there's no external label. It's just printed on the shirt. My God, how much I would have appreciated that back when I was a youngin'. Number 8. Not knowing how to react in normal situations, and especially when you don't give a rat's patoot. Oh God, that's happened to me a lot. Listen, having inattentive ADHD, like I mentioned before, is a lot like being underwhelmed. Just at everything. Everything is just meh. Very few things can excite you. So, a lot of the time, just not to be a douche, I've been at many events where I've had to fake excitement. Or, let's be honest, I've had to fake giving a crap that I'm even there. So, this is a big issue, and some people might just think you're a messed up person for not caring or not getting as excited or whatever it may be. But this, yet again, has to do with or low neurotransmitters. So, multiple supplements can help out in that regard. In my instance, L-tryptophan has been the most helpful. L-tryptophan has made me a lot more social because it has a lot. It's serotonin. It helps out with serotonin. It helps out with connectivity, feeling good, uplifting the mood. So, but if I don't take L-tryptophan or any sort of serotonin inducing supplement, and if I go to a funeral or something like that, I'll be there and I'll be like, okay, when the hell is this thing gonna be over? When am I supposed to cry? I kid you not, it sounds quite bad, but that's how it is. That's how it is having low levels of those neurotransmitters, serotonin particularly. It can make you just be underwhelmed. Someone can give you great news and you're just kind of like, oh, that's it. But, in order to be nice, just play along with it. And if you really want to really kind of feel a better sense of connectivity to people and more of an uplifted mood, L-tryptophan. Highly recommend. Number 9, feeling weird when taking pictures, especially with certain people. So this is something I've noticed that I've spoken to other inattentive types about. Yet again, this is something that's not researched. This is just something I've noticed, but I don't know. I just can't. There's a lot of things that a lot of neurotypicals, just regular average people do that I just feel uncomfortable doing. I feel very comfortable doing things that other people would feel extremely uncomfortable with. Like I'm a very tongue-in-cheek person. I've been on stage since I was about 5. I performed at hundreds of different places, musically, even presentations. There's all sorts of artistic things, and I don't know. Just I don't get nervous or excited or pardon. I do get excited, but I don't usually get nervous or feel kind of I recall in college when we had to take English, pardon, not English. We had to take speech 101, and a lot of people had to go up there and they had to give a speech, and our instructor told us that speaking in front of people or giving a speech in front of people is the most feared thing out of the 100 most feared things that humans fear. I was like, really? Giving a speech? That's it? And I saw that through and through. I saw people go up and give a speech in this class and almost have a nervous breakdown on stage. I found it quite humorous, unfortunately. Well, I felt bad for them, but I'm just like, really? Just from giving a speech? Like, why? But then, as I got older, this is years ago, I might have been only 19 when I took that class. And I realized that a lot of people, they feel everyone's eyes on them. They're like, they can't make a wrong move or say a wrong thing because they're going to be perceived this way or that way. And it can be a little tough, but anyways, going back to the picture thing. So, yeah, taking a picture can feel very kind of like, oh, I'm supposed to do this, or I'm supposed to fake an emotion or fake like I'm sort of feeling good. Because when we have inattentive ADHD, like I mentioned before, combine this with the points I've said before. Let's put it this way: you're gonna go to an event, right? Let's say one of your friends is gonna have a wedding. Boom, you get your outfit, you get it ready, and then it comes. You're like, oh crap, I feel extremely uncomfortable. And then guess what? The belt that you got is has the belt loophole in a very uncomfortable location. That's gonna make the belt too tight for you or something like that. The fabric of the clothing sucks. It's too hot or it's too cold. You're uncomfortable, and then everyone's having a great time, and you just feel like crap. And then guess what? Pictures. And some obnoxious extroverted person is gonna come up and take a picture of you, and you're like, I gotta fake an emotion now. Here we go. I gotta fake looking like I'm having a good time. So, it can be a common occurrence. I mean, just think about it. It's happened to me a lot, and I preferred to look either just straight faced, just kind of serious, or to look like an absolute buffoon in some of the pictures that I do. I can't take myself seriously cracking like a smile usually. I don't know. It's just something about it. It just feels fake. I'm like, what am I smiling at? Like what's really happening? I mean, that might sound kind of odd to some people whose reward system is really high and they feel really happy and connective and empathetic and stuff all the time. But when you have an intensive ADHD, what you're really thinking is, when the hell am I going to get out of this party so I can change out of these clothes that are really uncomfortable, or I can go home and just watch and just do what I want to do. Like, just thinking, you know what? Just think about that when you're taking the picture. I would think about, I sometimes would think about just ridiculous things while I was taking a picture. Just to kind of help out, especially if the people I was taking a picture with, if I didn't want to make them feel bad, because they thought that I felt bad for something they did or something like that. So, anyways, but yeah, that can happen. So, taking pictures can be a thing. Maybe it's not, but I figure I'd mention it. Number 10, being somewhere, particularly a crowded store, and not knowing where to stare, because making eye contact feels really weird. Not nervous, just weird. So this has to do, I'm not exactly sure what this one has to do with. This might have to do, if I had to guess, I would say maybe norepinephrine. There's a certain or not just, maybe it's not just norepinephrine, maybe it's multiple neurotransmitters. But, anyways, I digress. Because of our lack of multiple neurotransmitters, when we go somewhere, we feel and sense and see almost everything that's going on before us, as much as the eye can see. Usually, our peripheral vision is really good. This has to do with the evolutionary advantage that having a good sort of panorama style view, peripheral vision, in order to find or be able to see the threat, the enemy, whatever it was coming our way. So when I go shopping for groceries during the week, if I haven't taken a supplement or if I haven't taken a medication, and usually I make it a thing to always take Tyrosine at least before I go out in public, just because it helps out. It's my supplement that I take right when I wake up. It's a good get up and go supplement, Tyrosine. So when you go to the market, sometimes for me, I'll notice if someone turns into the aisle that I'm in, I can automatically tell. I can see them coming, and it might be a little uncomfortable. It's not that I'm nervous that I'm being watched. It's just there's a certain thing like, what are they gonna do to me? Like, what if they crash a car? It's just, it might seem silly, but that has a lot to do with the condition and sort of a fear of a threat. Not really anxiety in terms of, oh, how are they gonna look at me? Am I doing something wrong? But no, more of, what is this person gonna do? And this, I believe, has to do with the evolutionary instance of where inattentive ADHD comes from. So also in the market, sometimes when you get in line, you kind of don't really know what to stare at. Just because you feel that if you kind of look, for instance, for me, I look pretty intense, I've been told. So when I go somewhere, I usually like to just read information that's on products or whatever that are in the counter, because I usually shop only at like healthier, organic style markets and whatnot. So when I do go there, sometimes like I'll I'll just blankly start hyper focusing on a idea and just staring at the ground or staring at the conveyor belt after I put my groceries on the conveyor belt. And then other people will think there's something wrong with me. Like, why is this guy just staring so intensely at the ground or at this product or whatever it may be? Because a lot of neurotypicals cannot relate to hyperfocusing because they can't hyperfocus. That's an ADHD thing. So when we hyperfocus, some people are like, "Whoa, is this guy like pissed? Is he upset? Is he on drugs? Is he lost? Like, why is he staring so intensely at something?" So yeah, it can feel a little odd. It can also feel really odd just to kind of be staring and just to make eye contact with someone. Again, I don't feel a sense of nervousness. It just kind of feels awkward. So, but once I take all the other supplements that I take during lunch and the medication together, that all goes away. It's only when I have not had that that occurs, and everything feels so raw, so kind of. I guess you can look at it philosophically in the sense that it feels kind of odd because it's sort of like everyone you see kind of has this perspective or this kind of vibe with a certain thing or certain object or whatever thing in the market, and to you it's just kind of like it's just this. This is not anything special or unique. So a lot of philosophical banter can go into that, but I'm sure some of you with inattentive ADHD know what I'm talking about. So you see people connecting with the idea of something, whether it be in a market or a store or someplace, and then you kind of come up like a negative Nancy in your own mind, or just like this thing it's just this simple little object or idea or whatever it is, and you're like, what the hell do they see in that? So I don't know. That's just a lot of inner dialogue I get in my head. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you inattentive types also, get stuff like that. So anyways, to reiterate, when you're in a crowded store in a crowded market, it can feel really weird for you. You don't know where to look because you don't really want to look at anybody, or you don't want to kind of give an inclination that you're upset or whatever it is. You just want to keep to yourself, maybe. And being in a market with all these people and stuff going on, and especially when it's packed and you have a shopping cart, and you're like, man, you might hit somebody because our sense of estimation really isn't that good. So we're really concerned with not crashing our car into somebody else or knocking over like a booth of something or knocking over like a display or whatever it may be. So you're kind of on edge. You're sort of upset that someone might hit you because a lot of people stupidly walk slow and they just stopped walking out of the blue, and then you almost hit them. So grocery shopping in the market can be a very overwhelming experience. It can get you mad. It can get you, just stressed out. Because for all those things that can happen, you're just looking around. You don't want to really you feel this really raw sense of everyone kind of, trying to look at you, but you just don't want to. Whatever it is, not in an anxious way, but just sort of, I can't even explain it, in just an awkward way. And then you're crashing your cart, or you fear crashing your cart into something because of your bad sense of estimation. So, what's one way you can avoid all that? Now that you know that it's a problem if you didn't know before. Supplements. Supplements in your medication, if you decide to take it. That'll greatly help out with that. Also, not going to the market at 5 p.m. where people get out of work, which is why I love going to the market a little later at night when it is calmed down and I can roam through the aisles freely without anyone walking slow or some little kid, ramming a cart accidentally into me or whatever it is. So, yeah, I just recommend you go later. It's a lot more helpful and a lot less stressful. And also, make a list on your phone, on a notepad app or writing app of some sort. Make a list and take it with you. If you think you're going to remember everything, a good amount of the times you're not. And do not go grocery shopping when you're on the phone. You are an inattentive type. So if you're not taking supplements in the medication, or just supplements in general, it's going to be very hard for you to remember everything that you're supposed to get if you can't fully focus and concentrate. So make a list, and if you do want to talk on the phone, which I really don't see too much of these days, because people who talk on the phone, they're shopping, sort of a taboo thing. But yeah, have your supplements, and if you have medication or you're taking medication, take that as well, and go shopping at a later time. I know it sounds like a simple solution, but some people may not know, so, or just whenever you have time.